What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 2 of Wrestlers Who Should Have Been WWE Champion, but for whatever reason, never got that spot.
For those of you that missed our first one, we covered one of the greats, Mr. Perfect, and on this one, we're going to cover one of Glenn's favorites. I may have different opinions, but he does love this guy too much.
Alex isn't really a big fan of this guy, and I don't know why. He had the charisma, he had the look, he
didn't have the in-ring talent.
And then he had the machismo. And we're talking about the bad guy, Ramon.
Glenn, good thing you can't see Glenn's pants currently.
For anyone who else doesn't know who Ramon is, if you guys were WCW fans, that's Scott Hall. That was a guy who transcended wrestling in the mid-90s. Whether it be the jump to WCW, that the NWO started, that started the Monday Night War.
He is one of the guys that is responsible, for better or worse, the Monday Night Wars being as popular as they were.
The infamous curtain call incident as well.
Now, before he even got to WWE, he started in 92, I have here, but before that, he had years going around in other of the promotions.
He was a big indie
popular,
guy.
Yeah, being very popular in the indie scene. I mean, first he had that horrible nightclub incident.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Scott Hall was a bouncer at a nightclub and pretty much ended up killing a guy at some point, but that doesn't affect his wrestling career because once he came to the WWE, well, actually, in WCW, he was the Diamond Stud.
Yes, I believe you're right there. That was
Dallas Page.
1991 to 92 was his name there, and he worked with Diamond Dallas Page.
Exactly.
He had a weird career, too. Maybe he'll make the list eventually.
Maybe. So after that, apparently, Vince McMahon saw Scott Hall, offered him a job, and he debuted in, I think it was 1992?
1992, yes, he did.
1992?
There as Razor Ramon, and we all know Razor Ramon's character, the toothpick wielding, Scarface imitating, I don't want to say pretty
Cuban
boy.
guy from Miami.
Say hello to my little friend, sure. No, say hello to the bad guy, same thing.
Yeah, and, you know, he was, you know what's funny, I read, apparently, when he started doing the impression, Vince McMahon had never seen Scarface.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
No, it doesn't. And apparently Vince was just like really fond of Scott Hall's work ethic, his size, his charisma, basically.
Yes.
Because he was able to pull off being a Cuban guy at least semi-decently for not being Hispanic.
He did a good job with it. Now, as far as in-ring, I told you I was never a big fan of his in-ring, but as he came towards late 93 and 94, he had that he started having feuds with Bret Hart, and then, of course, Shawn Michaels, the ladder match at WrestleMania 10.
That was pretty much everyone views it as the original ladder match in WWE.
There was one before.
Yes, and apparently, according to Scott Hall, they had been doing ladder matches on the house show circuit for a while, and it just never was a televised thing.
So there you go. This is the first major televised ladder match, and okay, so you have to decide the fact that maybe it doesn't hold up compared to some of the later ladder matches, but just for the innovation at the time, yes, that was impressive, and I do give credit to Scott Hall for that.
I think one of the things I love so much about Scott Hall is if you actually look at him, Scott Hall's not a short guy. He's like 6'8", 6'9".
Oh, yeah.
But he would move around and wrestle just like he was like a guy that was maybe like 6'4". He had the agility at the time. He had the moveset of the time. He didn't wrestle like
he
Kevin
fell
Nash.
well. He knew how to fall down well.
Yeah, but no, I mean he didn't wrestle like he was a super big guy, like a Sid Vicious. You know what I mean?
I can see that. I mean, his finisher was a power bomb. Was basically a power bomb.
The Razor's Edge. It was like a crucifix power bomb.
So I can see that slightly, but yes, and when working with Shawn Michaels as well, you always raise your game up. Like he makes everyone better there. So as we're going through here, he remained in WWE as a force to be reckoned with, but never got the title. Never really came close too. He always had mid-card feuds.
I think he had a match with Bret Hart for the belt at one point, but it never materialized into him winning it.
Yeah, he had very few matches like that, and then finally. We come to around 96 after all his fights with him and Jeff Jarrett and things and Yokozuna. I think he was part of some match up there.
Yeah, that was an in-your-house match with him and Jarrett and the Roadie. I remember watching that.
That was a Mania. Well, Mania was him versus Jeff Jarrett, and not one of my favorite matches because the other guys kept interfering. That wasn't Ramon's fault. They just kept interfering. But finally, 1996, one of the most famous moments in wrestling history, the curtain call.
The curtain call incident, yep, that's... It was Kevin Nash's and Scott Hall's last night in the WWE. They were at MSG, and I believe it was Shawn Michaels faced Diesel, and I think Razor
in his
faced,
cage, right?
And then Razor faced Triple H earlier in the night. And these guys backstage, everyone knows they were known as the Clique. Them along with Sean Waltman, they were the guys that traveled together. Yeah, and that they just when they worked together, they always had chemistry because pretty much they were Road Brothers, where they did everything with each other, so they knew each other better than anyone.
So on their final day after that match, they all got into the ring and hugged each other, breaking the gasp
at the time.
kayfabe.
And
Vince was okay with it. He did nothing.
Vince was furious at it, and the only one who actually got punished was Triple H out of it for years.
I think it worked out better for Triple H in the end too.
It did. It's funny because Triple H's whole push that he was supposed to get with King of the Ring was supposed to be in '96, but they ended up giving that to Steve Austin and made him wait a year.
Boy, how things changed. So thank you, Razor Ramon, for Steve Austin at least.
Yeah, and I think that's also the reason that Triple H got squashed by the Ultimate Warrior at Mania. It was punishment.
Oh, what a match. No, it happened after. That happened after the Mania, yeah. He got squashed because it's just Warrior. That's it. So back to Nash. After this, he went to WCW.
Back to Hall.
I mean, Hall. Wow, I'm totally...
He went to WCW, showed up on one of the earlier Nitros in the crowd. They acknowledged... No, I don't think they... He came through the crowd and then just jumped in the ring. Yeah, and...
Him and Nash.
And what was interesting at the time... No, Nash came weeks later.
Oh, this shows how well I know my WCW history.
Hall showed up one of the nights during what was basically a jobber match between two people. I don't even know who they are.
We can
and
find
they just attacked
right
all
now.
of them. And what was weird at the time was no one really had known, because the internet wasn't a big thing, that Scott Hall had left WWE. And he was doing all his Razor Ramon mannerisms to the point where WWE had to send a cease and desist letter to WCW because they owned the Razor gimmick. Which is why, if you watch his first earlier interviews, he still had the accent, and then all of a sudden it was just dropped.
He just became Scott Hall,
yeah.
The Outsiders, and then eventually Hulk Hogan joined the fray, and you had the NWO. We know the history of the NWO, obviously, too.
And
so that is Scott Hall's thing there.
And then, after WCW folded, in 2002, the NWO made their grand return back to the WWE, and where I was... very happy to see Scott Hall. If you go back and watch that No Way Out promo when they first came out, the moment he said, "Hey yo," the crowd just went crazy. There was a loud ovation.
They liked Hogan more than the other two.
Yeah, but
they were there for Hogan. Okay, yeah, it kind of is.
No one was there for Kevin Nash.
No, we'll agree on that. We'll agree no one was there for Kevin Nash.
Scott Hall in his prime in the WWE in the '90s, where it was just all wacky gimmicks. There is no reason why he shouldn't have at least had a short run with the WWE title. He was able to move. He was able to wrestle. And even to this day, after getting his act together and finally getting clean, he's welcomed back into WWE's fray.
He's a frequent flyer. He makes appearances on many shows now. And yeah, that mid-'90s was the best. Was actually a good time. And I'm kind of unlike Mr. Perfect, who was stuck with Hogan, Razor Ramon's highlights was with a revolving door of champions, so that definitely surprised me.
He was one of the main guys in the new era, and he was working with guys the likes of, like you said, Jeff Jarrett at the time. He was working with Kevin Nash when Nash had two working quads.
Doink the Clown.
Doink the Clown.
Sion.
Savio Vega.
Mabel. Mabel even got a title shot.
The mid-'90s, guys, if you aren't a member of the WWE Network, you had some winners, and you had a whole lot of losers.
That's the best way to describe it.
One of my favorite people from the mid-'90s, which sadly is never going to make this series, is Repo Man. But there's a lot of reasons as to why.
Scott Hall did make this series. So
Scott Hall, he was the guy. He put over young talent. If everyone remembers the original Monday Night Raw, where he had that fluke loss to the 1-2-3 kid, Sean Waltman.
Another classic one, X-Pac.
And then basically ended up taking him under his wing at the time, and that's where the clique all first started coming together. Scott Hall, for what it's worth, he was that edgy character before Stone Cold was a thing. Even, I think, Austin at times has sort of admitted to Hall being that original edgy character. He was the slick talker. He was the guy that, would just go out there and just beat you up because he was an a-hole. He was supposed to be like Scarface.
And that is the WWE Championship material, the mid-'90s.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Hall really never had a bad pay-per-view match when it wasn't full of wonky, stupid tactics.
That's true.
Like his match at Mania 10, that ladder match is still viewed as one of the greatest ladder matches.
So whether I disagree completely on Scott Hall's influence, I will say that yes, he made an influence in the mid-'90s that cannot be changed.
Yep, guys, that's going to be our thoughts on Scott Hall, a guy who should have, by all means, at least won the title once in his career, even in WCW. Never won the WCW title. So
there we go.
That is Scott Hall.
We were promoting Scott Hall.
Autograph.
Here's more Scott Hall.
That.
Next time I bring pictures of my favorite wrestler. Probably not.
No one wants to see a picture of Cesaro.
We all want to see pictures of Cesaro winning the title. But for now, we're done here.
That is Scott Hall. That is episode 2, guys. Like the video. Leave your comments below whether or not you thought Scott Hall should have been a champion at one point. What do you think held him back, aside from leaving the company? And yeah, just leave your comments below, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, until next time.
See you later.